we can become too focused on the sweet individual honeybee, its transition from egg to larva to pupa to adult. Honeybees are a collective. Google superorganism when you have the time. Honeybees are always thinking about the more important reproduction of the colony. Beekeepers see that as packages and splits. Honeybees see that as swarms. Beware. As beekeepers, we spend a lot of time thinking about what to do next. A honeybee colony doesn't spend a lot of time thinking. It just does.
Okay, we're doing our inspection today, and we're on the verge of needing to put a second box on. We've preliminary worked one hive just to see what we're seeing, and we had to put a second box on it. Let's see what this one is doing. Just to give you a hint of how we identified that we're ready for probably a second box is always check this lid for a queen. We've been burned once so far this season. Now, if you look at this outside frame, I can look down there and see that they're drawing the comb on that outside frame. That's a signal to you that you need a second box on there because they've drawn to the very outside edge. I'll get some bees down here so Jim can get that outside frame out. Some people have been very concerned about bees hanging out on the front of their hive. That's not an uncommon thing. You wait till tomorrow. Now, just so you know, this frame was not marked as drawn. Last time we inspected it, it is now drawn down to practically the bottom. And they're putting pollen and honey in it right now. So we'll watch this hive to see how much stores are in it to see whether we're going to pull the feeder or not. So we got cap brood here. Look at this, beautiful cap brood, a lot of pollen. And then look at the honey in the corner, so we're doing good. You notice how gentle the bees are? They're just excellent. Solid cap brood on this side. No sign of the queen. Cap brood there too, eggs and larvae in the bottom, right?
Yep.
You could just tell after a while, you can look at a frame and tell whether there's eggs and larvae under by the way the worker bees are acting if you keep observing them. I'll bet that's laid out.
Yep, it's all laid out. She's gone back and laid back in there. There's larvae and eggs.
Now we see right here, couple drone cells. Look at them, they stick straight out. They are not sticking down, so they're not queen cells. The little drones never hurt anybody.
There she is, right there.
See right here, here's your queen. She's just busier than all get out. So this is probably her last frame that hatched.
And
excellent.
She just about got it full.
Had a little honey on that frame too. Whoa, all cap brood on this side. Pollen. Cap brood, beautiful cap brood.
Larvae.
Honey in the corners up there and there. Interesting, the honey's being stored in the back frame of the frames on this hive.
Yeah.
But there's no rhyme or reason to them. They do one thing one way. And we got cap brood here now.
Look what we got here.
We got 2 queen cups here. So let's see what we got in them. Get the bees out of the way. And I'll open them up and you can see right there is an egg. She is laid in that one, so she's feeling a little crowded. And there is an egg in that one too. So that's why you check them. We'll cut those out. They're not doing anything yet. You destroy them and they'll be fine. We're going to give them lots of room to think about here. You can see these are good frames of bees. They're covering everything. You don't see them flying up at your face or anything. This back side is pretty much all cap brood. Look at in here, a few drones sneaking around. That's a beautiful
these
frame.
drones, since we're not seeing a lot of uncapped, these drones may have come from other hives.
Yeah.
There's another one right there.
I will tell you, I personally take them out when I work my hives, then I know that they weren't there the last time.
You've got an extra 9 days.
Yeah. And that has got a mixture of, I would say this is probably all eggs and larvae, and that's exactly what it looks like.
Yeah.
And you got lots of honey here and lots of honey there, and look at that. That's a frame against the feeder. They didn't draw it out completely, but they will now that we're going to remove the feeder here. This one's got plenty of honey stores for it to go, and you can see here, we disturbed a little bit of honey and they're gonna clean it out, and we'll just set the feeder beside the hive and let them clean it out and stuff. So I'm gonna take this and set it aside. We're gonna get a extra frame and put in there in place of where the feeder was gonna be, but we're gonna move this frame over. So Jim can slide that in there. You wanna do that to get them to draw it straight and square. They'll do a much better job if you do that. Okay, now we need to move this over. Get our last frame in there. All right, okay, let me hold this to you. Now we're gonna center all this.
Okay, mark that frame.
Okay,
Right here.
sorry. Remember, mark your frame so you know what's going on. You know you only have one frame you have to look at.
Are we calling this 6 or 5.5 frames of brood?
Right,
What?
5.5.
5.5.
So we're gonna put this on here. Normally, if you are a little nervous about food, you'll take this and slide it over, put your feeder back in there on that side, and set this frame in your garage until you're ready for it. Probably by next week, you would definitely pull that feeder out because the honey flow will be on, I promise you.
You take out the middle 3 and
If
shake
you
Yeah.
if you have this whole area covered with bees and they're out on the edge, you can gently set it down at an angle and then move it like this, and that'll push the bees out of the way. You'll squash a lot less bees.
We're gonna take these frames out just for a second so Jim can shake the bees off of the feeder in there rather than having them fly through the air. And you want me to do it? They don't usually like that very much. Okay.
They're being very mild
They are.
today.
They don't
Incredibly
really care.
mild.
I'll set the feeder down here beside it. Jim will put the frames back in. We'll start over. Next week, we hope to come in here and see some of the frames right dead center in the middle drawn out as the bees have moved up, because you've got 8 frames, or basically 7 frames to 8 frames of bees here and there. So those 2 cups that we saw with eggs in them go from a cup to a queen cell when you have any larvae or eggs in it. So in this case, we'll call those queen cells. We cut them all, which is perfectly what you should do. The egg was standing straight up and down, so she just laid it today. But what the key thing is there, get rid of them. She's got lots of space now. She was probably feeling a little bit on the pressured side of being a little crowded. And so she should have plenty of room now. But you should always look in those every time you're working your hive. You want to look in those cups. That's your first indicator that something could possibly happen. And when we work this hive next time, we will mark on this lid CC, which is cut cells, so that we know to very carefully go through it. Remember, those cups were right on the bottom, so they are going to face down versus your drones are facing horizontal. Your queen cups will be facing down, and it's real easy to spot them that way. And they're very careful about putting them on the bottom of the frame there for us, so that was good.
If you find the queen cup in the center of the frame, you're going to want to be real careful because that may be an indicator that they're not real happy with that queen. And you're going to watch for an egg definitely in that cup.
Yep. So when you see a queen cell on the bottom of the frame, that's normally an indicator that they're thinking of they're crowded and they might have to swarm. If you remove the crowdedness, they'll usually give up on those queen cells. After you cut them out, they won't show back up. But you will definitely check next week to see that they're gone and there are no more eggs in a cell. But the ones that you find in the middle of the frame is usually an indicator to you that you need to pay close attention to that queen. The bees are thinking of superseding when you see one in the middle of the frame. Now, if you have a hive that's just bulging with bees and there's queen cells everywhere, that doesn't count. And an indicator like this would be, if I found a cell in the middle of the frame, I would definitely be checking the performance of this queen against the other ones I see here to make sure that she is performing up to par. Otherwise, you might want to think about replacing her.
And if you see one on the bottom of the frame, there are more. You're going to have to be very careful because they'll hide them in the most awkward places. So make sure, because if you miss one and you wait a week, it might be too late.
Okay, when I went through this one, this is one we've had to feed every week. And again, it doesn't have honey stores like all the others do. All the others have honey stores. So it actually went down 1 pound. So it's not gaining weight at all, and it's been consistent pattern of sitting right at 44 to 43 pounds. So we're gonna leave the feeder in it. But she's got 5 full frames of cap brood. That's gonna hatch out in the next week, and then she's gonna be really crowded. So what we're gonna do is, we brought the feeder upstairs. You can see downstairs, we put an empty frame right here. But you can see she hasn't drawn completely out these two here. They're not drawn down to the bottom, so I didn't mark them as drawn. Though there is brood and eggs on one side of this, but one side's pretty undrawn. But there's no honey stores in here hardly at all. I mean, I bet I couldn't find a half a cup of honey in there. So we put the feeder back in, we'll feed it, and probably in the middle of the week I will check it again and see what the status of the food is in there. But the honey flow is on in this area right here. I would have expected this to gain weight. All the other hives have gained anywhere from 3 and 4 pounds, and you can see this one lost a pound. I start getting nervous about that this queen is maybe not performing or encouraging the bees to perform the way they should. You might have a hive that drags their butt the whole summer, and it's because the queen isn't really motivating them.
Here we go.
I push the M button, it turns it on, it calibrates, it goes to 0. I put this under the center of the back, and I raise it up till it's all the way off, and I let it down, and it remembers it, and it says 72 pounds because we put the second box on. So the first box weighed 43, and with the second box on, it added weight to bring it up to 72. It'll hold the 72 till you push the reset. You hold it in, resets it to 0, or you hold it in longer, and it shuts it off.